How are your pipes, Kevin?
Yeah. Do you sing?
My pipes?
Yeah.
Pipes.
Oh, I'm a terrible singer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hum sometimes, and I whistle a little bit. I beatbox a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I can make a racket up there when I'm, in the zone, but not a very good singer.
What did
But
you?
now, so that the woman I was working with then, and Jeremy, those two guys they don't no longer work with me, but now I've got 3 guys working with me. There's a woman working with me too, but she's gone for a couple months. But all of them are in bands.
Oh, okay.
We've got 2 drummers, a bassist, and a singer now, and I'm the odd person out with no band.
Pick up the guitar, a keyboard or something, then you got a full band.
Triangle's always good.
Yeah, the triangle.
Cowbell.
Yeah, cowbell.
Cowbell, yeah.
Yeah.
I just bought some cowbells. I'm going to do a little mini competition here in Eugene. And I went to the hardware store. This is great. I went to the hardware store and there was 4 cowbells on the shelf. And the employee comes up to me. And he's like, "Hey, I got to ask, like, when does this happen? Do you need more cowbell?"
He's been like, waiting my whole
life.
life.
I was like, I wish I could say yes, but I think this is a perfect amount of cowbell.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Never enough cowbells.
All right, we're back. This week, we are talking to somebody who's had a huge impact on our profession in many different ways. So I look forward to this conversation. But before we get far into it, I'm Andrew.
Jamie.
Nate.
I'm Kevin.
And yeah, thank you, Kevin, for coming on the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's getting ready for this conversation. I listened to a few of your other podcasts you've done, The Educated Climber, The Climbing Arborist, and it was just awesome listening to those conversations. On those conversations, you really got into the story of the rope runner and the rope wrench, and I'm sure we'll refer back to those, stories throughout this conversation potentially, but I don't want to just have the same conversation that I just listened to a couple times.
Right.
I want to kind of see what you're up to these days. So yeah, what have you been up to these days?
Well, the last year, I guess, kind of been dedicated to my little tree service. Got a little a crew here. We're 4 of us all together, and then my wife, she does the estimates and all the business side of everything. So she's I guess the CEO, I'm the COO, so I basically try to chief of operations, I guess, and try to keep everything going smoothly. We've got a old building that we sort of base out of, which is we've owned now about 6 or 7 years, and most of the 6 or 7 years it's only had half a roof, and pours rain every time it rains, and so this year we've put a new roof on it and now trying to get it reorganized. And so I've been spending a lot of time sort of thinking about that, and getting the logistics going behind that, as well as going out with the crew and kind of making sure things are going somewhat smoothly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been a big part of my last year. I feel like we've kind of had a little bit of an evolution at our tree service. Well, partly my wife has gotten a lot more involved, and so she's made it a lot more serious, I think. Probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's changed over the years since I first started. I got 3 little kids. So yeah, I have to take it a little bit more seriously and keep it running all the time.
Are you looking at growing it to a bigger company? I know that's one of those things. Different guys have different kind of ideas of how they want to run their company and where they want to go. And that's always, there's kind of these points where you grow to a point where you're comfortable, and then all of a sudden you might have a storm or something that creates a bunch of work, and it's easy to see dollar signs and hard to avoid that growth, but that can also be a challenge.
Oh yeah, I think my attitude the whole time has been to try to fight growth as much as possible, just like hold it at bay
Yeah.
and not let it get out of control. And I think I still have that mentality. But it is hard because yeah, I think a lot of the tree services around here too, we're booking out in April right now,
Wow.
which is like crazy. I mean, that's a new experience for us for sure to be that far out. And that creates challenges too, because a lot of people don't want to wait around until April, and then so you filled up your schedule in April, but then people on the way cancel, they get other people to do it, and then you're running around doing all these estimates, and you can only do so much amount of work. So yeah, but then you think about growth, and there's all kinds of things that go along with that, like where do you put all the stuff, where do you it's a whole new, you have to get a whole new equipment for a whole nother crew. Yeah, so
a lot of debt comes with growth, and that's one of those challenges is, you might get more money coming in, but if you had to buy a new truck and a new chipper to, get another crew out there, then is that money coming in going to just paying off debt? Yeah, that's always a tricky one.
Yeah, and theoretically, like, it would bring in more money, but more headache, more employees, more, so we'll see how it goes. My preference would be to keep it small and simple.
Yeah.
And just but it's a challenge, especially when you've got, old clients that I've had for years and years, and now I'm telling them we can't get to them until April, and then it might not be me anymore that comes out to do the tree, and they're expecting me to be the guy in the tree. And so yeah, it's kind of, that's been weird. Over the last few years, I think I've been doing it more and more, but just passing on it's not me at the front of everything. It's also kind of cool to go to the job and like the customer treats me just like another employee, or doesn't know who. And I asked the foreman, hey, what do you want me to do? What tree do you want me to jump in? And since my wife has been doing the estimates, I haven't even seen the job. But yeah, it's kind of going around full circle again. I'm like just a employee at a company again.
Yeah,
Nice.
hopefully the client just doesn't Google your name beforehand or something.
Right.
They don't know who you are. What do you see as your ideal size to keep that quality control high, Kevin?
Well, I mean, I like just a one simple crew is
Crew, nice.
hard enough for me.
Yeah.
But it may be we actually did it over at a point early in the summer. We had like 6 people, and we were kind of between the dump trailer. We have a dump trailer and the chip trailer. We were basically running 2 crews. But then it was sort of like a kind of patchwork together here and there. But I don't know. It's nice sort of having one crew. I have a friend, really close friend. He's and we started our companies right around the same time. And you know, at the Michigan comps for years and years, there was 3 of us in the Masters Challenge. It was me and Jack and Lucas. And Jack, he started a company in Ann Arbor right around the same time that I did, but he's kind of just let it go, you know, like he didn't fight growth at all. Like I've definitely pushed it back as much as possible, but he's up to like 45 employees now.
Oh,
Whoa.
And, like cranes and grapple trucks, and he bought another company in the middle of this also. He went from like 20 employees to 40 employees, and it's incredible. He's doing really well, and he's happy. He's really good at it too. But one of the things he says is that he's no longer really a tree person, but more of a psychoanalyst and a therapist for,
Yeah.
you know, and you've got 45 people that all have to figure out how to get along, and you know, in the process of growing up and going through life changes, and everybody's got issues, and yeah, so he's basically the guy that kind of holds everybody's hand, and you know, you can do this, we
yeah.
got your back. You know, dealing with all the drama that comes with people spending 9 hours a day together for every day.
Yeah,
trying to do-
that's really tough. I've managed crew. The biggest crew I managed was about 14 people, and
Wow.
that was more than I'd want to do. I'm happiest if I have about 2 crews and 5 people.
Yeah.
So that way you can have, if it's 5 people including me, then I've got the capacity for 2 3-man crews, and that I think that a 3-man crew is a sweet spot for really getting work done. But then
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you have a big
Yeah,
job.
two people feels like you start getting overwhelmed.
Yeah,
4 people, it starts getting crowded.
yeah,
Yeah, I think three is definitely. I mean, it depends on what you're doing, but
Yeah.
yeah.
3-person crew can do anything.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've got 2 3-person crews, then when you get those big jobs, you can just kind of come together and swarm. But if you don't have a big job, you can have just 2 power crews going out and getting work done. That's what I always was most comfortable with. But yeah, my brother right now is growing a company like that. I don't know that he's up to 40 right now, but I think he's got like 5 or 6 tree trucks going, and I don't know how many people are in it, but they're just pushing and they're hiring. I mean, everybody I know right now is hiring if
Yeah.
you're a good climber, so it's crazy what's going on in the tree world.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think with the pandemic, a lot of people ended up going, having to go home. They weren't going on their vacation. They were just hanging out at home. And so they're at their house, looking at their yard, kind of making those plans. Oh, there's some deadwood up there. Or, well, if we remove this tree, then we can build a shed here, whatever it is.
Right.
That money's going towards their house and not towards their vacations or their travels or food.
Bars, restaurants, concerts.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know.
Sure.
It's been pretty crazy.
So you're in Detroit, right, Kevin?
Detroit. Yep.
Detroit proper. How was Emerald Ash Borer? Was that something you guys dealt with?
Oh yeah, that was basically 2003 through 2007, 2008 kind of was the last time I really got into. Every once in a while we'll do a ash tree here or there. There's a few survivor ashes that deadwood, and a few trees that got treated that are but yeah, it was a good solid 4 years of just cutting down ash trees nonstop. And a lot of other places are going through that now,
Yeah.
New York and Virginia, they're just starting to see that come through. But it was pretty crazy if I look back.
That's one we're really worried about here. It hasn't got here yet, but a lot of people feel like it's inevitable. And here we've just got these huge wetlands that are full of ash trees. I mean,
Oh, no way.
yeah.
I
So
didn't realize that.
Yeah, we're in the middle of the Willamette Valley, which is, you know, just at the bottom of the valley. It's just tons of wetlands, and when and if it gets here, it is going to hit hard, and I really do not look forward to
That's
that.
terrible. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Our native ash is called an Oregon ash, Fraxinus latifolia, and apparently the studies that have been done on that say the EAB likes them just as much as the green or the white.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's kind of what I've heard too.
yeah, it was pretty traumatic just
Don't-
watching this whole
Don't
such a
move
huge
firewood.
part of the system disappear.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you think, I mean, just layering that on top of what happened to all the chestnuts, all the elms. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had the Dutch elm hit here. It's not as bad as I was worried it would be. You know, there's still a handful of elms around, although I did remove a couple really big, beautiful elms. It was kind of a bummer to remove, but
Well, that's surprising to me also because I mean, I guess they grow really fast, but I still remove big. Like, how did this tree survive so long and get so big, and then all of a sudden succumb to
Yeah.
it? But you know, they can hide out for a long time, and then but they're you know there's still definitely ash trees, elm trees around. I think the ashes are doing the same thing too. They'll be sort of there, and then they'll hit a point where, you know, I think the population has to be high enough for them to support epidemic of ash borer. You know,
yeah.
when they came through, there was just so much food for them to eat that the ash borer just got up to huge numbers, and then they all died. And then I think the ash borer kind of is not around so much. And
Yeah.
some of the ash trees got lucky, basically, and either didn't get killed completely or were never even found to begin with. And then
Yeah.
it's interesting too. I have a theory that if they've been attacked but survive, they get because like they almost get partially girdled by the passages that they carve in the trunk.
Yeah.
But then the whole cambium gets like mottled and warped, like layered in a way that makes it seem to me that it would be harder to actually girdle it. I
Interesting.
don't know. That's sort of a theory I have because there's some trees that have obviously been hit, but didn't get completely wiped out, and then they've gotten hit again and not completely wiped. And they're strong trees, so they've become sort of a different, you know, no longer this straight, awesome ash tree, but a little bit like mottled and really crazy bark structure. Sort of cambium growing over cambium.
What do you mean by harder to girdle? Like they're just focusing on certain sections of the bark hard and then leave.
Well, yeah. So like if they've already if the ash the borer has already like made it a quarter of the way around, and then then the next season comes along, and then you've got a layer of cambium that's grown over that bark. So it's like different. It's like more three-dimensional. Like it's hard to describe, but if you look at the tree, like you can see where it the passages went through, and then it's started to callus over, and then in another area it'll be like, you know, the two seasons out they'll have the passageways, and that's getting calloused over, and then so the whole thing, it's not like a smooth, like if the ash borer can't make one way around the whole tree anymore because there's all these different steps from the various injuries. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
So it's like
just
there's
a theory I have that doesn't, I mean, there's no backing to it, but I've sort of looked at that like, wow, you know, ash borer on this tree would have a hard time to do what it did to a fresh virgin ash tree, to actually cut all connection between the trunk and the tree, the leaves and the roots.
The ash borer antibodies.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to picture it. I love kind of theories that are, just tree guys hanging out, trying to figure it out. Yeah. Observations. So are you thinking it's like channels of good, cambium, and so if the emerald ash borer is coming around, it hits a dead spot and then stops trying to girdle at that point, and then maybe there's another channel over here that allows the life to continue.
Exactly. Yeah, that's sort of the sort of thing. I've got, there's a tree in particular on my block that still looks really good. But if you look up closely at the bark, there's a whole history of it fighting off ash borer for the past 15 years now. Even more, really. Now it's so. I mean, that's the crazy thing to like ashes that are around and alive, still making leaves and seeds. They've been dealing with ash borer for almost 20 years. 18.
Wow.
I think the first ash borer is 2002, 2003. And then it really started taking off in 2004, 2005.
What's your approach to a tree that's been hit by the borer but it hasn't died? Just looking to promote vigor like you would with most things, organic mulching and.
There's going to be a lot of dead wood that you're going to take out of that tree. And I think I'm usually on the side of, there's a lot of trees that are like in decline, right? Silver maples, Norway maples. And to me, it's talking to the customer and like, well, what's your relationship to this tree? Do you still appreciate it? Do you want to just put it out of its misery now? I mean, it could live another 10 years. It could live another 5 years. Unless it's a threat to somebody, it's like, oh, it's just got some suckers growing out of the base. You still like it? Still got a good trunk on it?
Yeah.
Let's keep it. Let's just do it, when your dog gets to be 16, 17 years old or whatever, I think a lot of times people think of trees as like as a building or something, but other people look at their trees as like, that's a member of the family. I walk past that tree every day when I come home.
Yeah.
And I like that tree. So, and I'm sad that it's dying. So, but even if you get another 2 years out of it, another 3 years, so it's hard to say on the ash. They get to a point where almost, people call them zombie trees, but I don't know if it's still making leaves and it's still giving you shade and it's not gonna smack your house or your car. Let's just cut out the deadwood. And I don't think I would recommend necessarily injecting it or trying to, unless it's like a really phenomenal specimen that needs to be saved at all costs. But I don't usually recommend chemicals for that sort of thing, unless it's certain trees, certain elms and ashes that I've like, oh, this is definitely worth doing what we can to save it.
Sure.
Yeah, we deal with similar stuff here. We're here the birches are getting destroyed by the bronze birch borer.
Yeah,
and
we get that too.
Yeah, it's the same conversation with clients where they really love the tree and they see it's half of it's dead and asking if you should remove it or not. And it's like, well, how much do you like it? Do you want to keep investing into it, or do you want to just rip the Band-Aid off and plant something there that's gonna that is gonna be a lot healthier for a lot longer?
Yeah,
it's different for everybody, like they ask me what they should do, and it's like, what do you want to do? I mean, it's in your backyard. You look at it every day. It's that's your question to answer.
Yeah, people ask me that. I'm like, what would you do if it was your tree? And I'm like, you should see my trees. I've got this silver maple in my backyard that is absolutely just horribly. I mean, a full third of it is completely dead. It's got codominant stems. It's overhanging the power line. It's the ugliest tree ever. But the same time, like it's got a whole array of birds that come in it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's got an amazing trunk that's just like awesome to look at, and so I
Yeah.
don't know.
Last,
I'm like, don't
oh,
ask me about what I do with my trees. I'll probably just not do anything at all.
Yeah. We just did this willow last weekend. Andrew and I worked together. You tell the story because I showed up as
Okay,
something
yeah.
was happening.
so, you know, we pull up and talking with a client, walk into the backyard. It's this beautiful old willow that we had some big ice and snowstorms here, probably about 5 years ago, and we're not used to getting big freezing rain and snow events here, so it just took out trees. And so
Oh,
there's like
wow.
a lot of old topping cuts on this thing. Apparently, it used to be just this massive tree that went over like a couple of yards and whatnot. But so we're walking back there, and as I get it in the backyard, I like see this big bird flying around inside a pretty thick willow, and it's kind of crazy. And so I look up, and there's an owl, a barred owl, and a big hawk that are in this tree messing with each other. Like, you know, just not like fighting,
Oh, no
but
way.
both a couple feet from each other, and one it'd like mess with one and it'd mess back, and then all of a sudden these hummingbirds start flying around them, and these songbirds come through the tree, and then like this murder of
Oh,
crows
wow.
like come into the tree and start mess, and it's just like there was a bee nest in it, and it's this crazy gnarly looking willow, and it was just the tree of life. It was like, what do you even do in this situation? There's
Oh, that's
a
so
whole
cool.
ecosystem going on.
Yeah.
You know?
It was cool. It was like a beacon of life. And the client was really cool. And like our work order was to get hazardous deadwood out of it, right? And
Yeah.
kind of weight reduction because this thing was, you know, basically topped from the ice storm. So all these
Yeah.
suckers and stuff. But she was totally receptive to us being like, yeah, this is a big chunk of deadwood, but look, there's a hole in it. Something's living in there. Something's, you know, we totally just kept big stuff and made it like a habitat tree that it already was, you know. It was cool. It's always cool
Nice.
when clients
Yeah.
open to that stuff, our
Oh,
crazy ideas.
Yeah, well, the client, she's a shaman, and her name
Oh.
is Willow Hawk. So she
Oh,
was
no
just
way.
like, yeah, she's like, this is a sign from the universe that you guys are meant to be working on this tree. And it was, I mean, it was there was probably like 3 other plum trees growing out of like decay pockets in this willow. It was,
Yeah, you did a little pruning on the plum.
yeah, I
That was
ornamentally pruned the plums for them so that they looked all like put together in the canopy. It was a
That's
pretty,
wild.
yeah, it was a pretty fun project.
Yeah, just because the tree is dead doesn't, you know, there's still life that goes on there.
Oh yeah,
So much. So
Yeah.
much.
yeah.
Yeah.
I work in I work for the city now, so in urban forestry, you know, you kind of when you zoom out and look at the trees as an overall forest, you know, I think that's one of the things people don't take into account nearly as much as I wish they would, is that the trees are just part of an urban forest. All the waterways, the critters that live within there also, and there's so many dimensions that, you know, a tree by itself isn't. Yeah, I mean, it's cool, it serves its purpose in your backyard, but trees are meant to be part of a community, you know, and like all the
Yeah.
research that's coming out about how they communicate through the mycelium network by passing resources back and forth and warning each other that they're being attacked by
Mhm.
insects, or, you know, it's fascinating, all that information that's coming out.
It's like the trees are singing to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's really true. That's amazing.
yeah, it's, you were telling us before we started recording that you just came back from, you know, thinking about all these birds in the trees, and we're going to be having David Anderson on soon. You're just telling us about how you were in Central America, or Colombia, was it?
Yeah, Colombia.
Yeah. What did you have going on down there?
So, David Anderson. Well, I guess I had met James Luce. Gosh, it must have been 6 or 7 years ago in Oregon. I did a presentation at the Pacific Northwest chapter, and I went out with Damien Carre and James and Will Kumijan and climbed a big Doug fir outside of Portland.
Nice.
You've probably been there. but James had set up a line, throw line, and it was I think the first time I'd gone up over 200 feet in a tree. So it was really, my wife came, and so I hung out with James a good bit, and we had talked, and he told me about his explorations down in South America. And I was an exchange student in Ecuador when I was in high school, so I have an interest in South America too, and so we chatted a lot about that. And then so him and David Anderson started this program. I guess David met James, and David had learned how to climb trees on his own. He was sort of autodidact, figured it out, how to get up into a tree and do his scientific studies. He was studying some birds in Honduras, and so he sort of jerry-rigged his own little technique. And then later he met James, who taught him how to climb like an arborist. And David was like, holy shit, this is amazing. I've got to teach all the biologists how to do this. And so him and James started this program basically to teach rainforest biologists in Latin America how to access canopy. So, and using modern arboricultural techniques. And for the past, I guess it was, this was the fifth one. And I think, so the third and the fourth one, I donated a bunch of rope wrenches for the thing. I was like, oh, that's a great thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
So I donated a bunch of rope wrenches and like whatever you need for me to help out. That's awesome. And then 2020 was canceled because of the pandemic, and then James had his accident. He had a horrible mountain biking accident and passed away. And I guess he broke his neck and was paralyzed, so he was able to communicate, take care of business for a month or so before he actually decided to leave this world. And one of the things was to figure out what was going to happen with the accessing the canopy, discovering the canopy. And he thought that maybe David should invite me to go along for the trip. And he remembered that I, spoke Spanish a little bit. And, so yeah, that's sort of the way I ended up getting on board with the trip. And it was really interesting. This was the first year that it was done without James, and James was a huge part of that. He was an excellent teacher. I remember when going out to the Doug firs, like he really was patient and helped my wife get up in the tree, and just made sure everything went smoothly with, there's a bunch of us going out there. So yeah, it was hard shoes to step into. And the first year it was David and James, and then they added Patrick Brandt, he's from North Carolina. And then this year, or no, I guess Emmett, he's also out in Seattle somewhere. But then Noel and myself, so it was 5 people this year. And it was really, it was a great trip. Noel is an amazing teacher. He's completely bilingual, which was very helpful. My Spanish is somewhat limited, and David speaks very good Spanish. He's been going back and forth for years and years. But it was really, really fun. And it was also great to be on just a different side of arboriculture, or what's the reason for going up in these trees. And the reason, instead of like making cuts or doing anything to the tree, it's just, you know, like discover what's up there. And in the Amazon, there's just so much stuff up in the tree. It's really wild, different kinds of ants and bees and birds. And yeah, going with, you know, it was really special experience too, climbing these trees and being able to share my tree climbing skills with these biologists who were really, really intelligent people as far as what was going on up in the tree, like what kind of orchid this was and what kind of bromeliads. And oh, look at that bird over there. I didn't even see that bird, but there's the bird over there, and this bird likes to eat this insect. And it was really fascinating. It basically a beautiful bunch of nerds, and like just so in depth knowledge. I mean, they're young too, like between undergraduate and graduate school. And so yeah, when it was, you know, we were at a eco resort in Colombia, which was, I mean, it's always sad going to something like where we went, because it's like the last, I don't know, maybe 1,000 acres, and then you look outside of the eco reserve and it's all cattle ranches and mining operations. And
Yeah.
but then it's also like, wow, this is really important work, trying to figure out at least what's here and what we're losing so fast.
Yeah. That human impact is so sad when you go to a place where it becomes so obvious, you know. It's but like you say, it makes it that much more important to get into those places and see what's in there and see what
yeah, I mean, it's likewise flying over Oregon, you realize the impact of, I'm gonna get my charger really quick. I really realizing.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it's amazing the logging that has happened in Oregon and the impact on our forest. We've got an amazing forest here, you know, but like you say, you fly over, it's just checkerboard of these big logging operations, you know, and really even the vast majority of the forest is second, third growth, you know. There's the amount of actual old growth is pretty small.
Yeah, flying back from Colombia was really.
I'm having a hard time hearing you there.
Sorry, is that better?
It sounds kind of
helium.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can. Hold on real quick.
Yeah, no worries. No, take your time.
Wondering if I.
Well, it sounds like a tribute trip as well. Your Colombia journey.
Yeah.
You know, what a great thing to honor your friend and see his dream through.
Did you guys ever meet James?
I can't say that I knew him real well. You know, going to like competitions and conferences in the Pacific Northwest, you know, he was definitely a personality in the community here. So I knew of him, but I can't say that I was close with him or really knew him that well. But when he got in his accident and passed away, it was, you know, the amount of people I knew that were sharing stories of him and photos of him, just that reaction had an impact of like, oh my goodness, we just lost a really powerful member of the community.
And every article I've read by him, it took me a while because it was always JAMZ, like Jam.
Yeah.
And I was like, who's this guy? Jams Loose. Like, what a cool, like, he must be like a freestyle on the side. And like, is that just how he actually spells his name? Like,
you know, I don't know. I only met him that one time in the Pacific Northwest, and you know, we communicated a little bit about the rope bridges and stuff. But yeah, I always wondered the same thing. Like, is it James? But people just refer to him as James. So
Yeah. The audio is still really kind of tinny. It seems like it's covered up or something. I don't know if there's a case on your phone or.
yeah, maybe let me try to take the case off.
Although if the case was there the whole time,
Is that better?
That's good.
yeah, I mean it's not where it was, but if that's what it is, then that's what we got. We'll make it work.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the battery is just getting low, and now it's something along those lines.
Sounds good.
Sounds fine.
Yeah, sounds good.
Perfect.
Gotta put it up against something.
Do you have any other trips down south planned?
It's a once a year
So
thing.
yeah, I right after I think we went to Colombia in August, and then at the beginning of last month I went down with Noel to Mexico, and we did a week-long climbing training for the it's a like tree gear. It's La Casa de Arborista, and they're just like a tree stuff in Mexico.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
So, and that was for climbers, and it was really cool too because it's definitely a really growing industry, great community as well. So, kind of interesting to be on the seeing all these young climbers coming up and getting really excited about it, and that was really fun.
Yeah, where at in Mexico?
So it was about an hour and a half outside of Mexico City,
Okay.
and in a really beautiful place. It was like a Boy Scout camp. They had little cabins we all stayed in, and great trees, variety of people. Some people that were actual like full on climbers, and then several people that were wanting to be climbers. So, and then Noel is just a great teacher. So I went down with Noel. So it was me and Noel on this trip. And I'm not sure if that's going to turn into more opportunities. I'm thinking I'm going down to the in March. There's the Mexican Tree Climbing Championship, and I'm hoping to go and participate in that, in some volunteer or climb or whatever too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's one of my first when I was in high school, we went down to Costa Rica, and I've told the story on the podcast before, so if you've heard it already, I'm sorry. We were in Monteverde, Costa Rica, which is where they do a lot of the canopy research down there.
Yeah.
And so like as a group, we were hiking through the woods, and there was this giant strangle fig, and I just like kind of went into the middle of it and started climbing up, and just started climbing up through the center of this tree. It was a real trippy kind of experience.
Oh, wow.
Because you could like look down, and it was like looking down this tunnel, but there was all these, vines that would come out, were these perfect handholds. And so I just kind of went up until it opened up at the top, and I was like at the top of the canopy. And it was one of those kind of, I don't know how tall it was, but it like might as well have been 300 feet tall. It just blew my mind when I got to the top, and you're at the top of this, legitimate rainforest canopy. And that was always one of those moments in my life where I was like, oh, yep, climbing trees is one of those things I do now. It just, I'm in a whole different world. And yeah, so I just love the idea of climbing in those rainforest kind of jungle environments. That's kind of on my bucket list to make it back down there and climb in a forest like that again. I've been on a couple zip lines in Costa Rica and places like that since then, where you're zip lining, which is is similar, but it's not really the same
awesome
thing. You're not sitting and like experiencing the environment. On a zip line, you're like flying through it, like there we go, and now I'm back on a platform. But yeah, I love it. I love it.
How was that down climb?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Always harder than going up.
Yeah, no, I don't remember it being an issue at all. I mean,
Cool.
the chaperones were freaking out, but it was like a ladder. It was just like these little perfect handholds and footholds. So you just kind of like climb a ladder up, and I've always kind of had that monkey gene in me, so it kind of is what it is.
That's wild. Wow. That would be
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, it's a trip. I need to make it back to Monteverde.
So should we talk about climbing?
Yeah, yeah. Oh.
Have you talked on a podcast at all about the development of the Rope Runner Pro?
No, not so much. I guess when I was doing the educated climber, that was just coming out, I think.
Yeah, you talked about how it was you had been talking with Rock Exotica about working on a device, and then that kind of fell through, and it was just like, hey, we're working on something, and hopefully we'll have another version of this, you know.
Yeah, so tree stuff I sold or whatever, the rope runner to tree stuff, and then tree stuff tried to sell it to Rock Exotica, but while that was going on, Cheryl bought tree stuff, and Cheryl started Notch, and then so they pulled it out of Rock Exotica, which was also at the same time developing the Kimbo. So it seemed like maybe there wasn't space at Rock Exotica to do it, and there wasn't the willpower or whatever. So
I was kind of wondering if the Akimbo, if there was part of maybe an original design of the Rope Runner Pro in the Akimbo, if there was some kind of crossover there, or
not so much. I think, they obviously come from similar roots.
Yeah.
And shared a lot of the same characteristics. But I think one of the ideas with the Rope Runner Pro, the biggest complaints about the original Rope Runner was like it comes apart into 3 different pieces. So, that was the main driving factor on the Rope Runner Pro, was to get it into all one piece. And it was Notch put a team of engineers on it. They definitely put more effort into it than I think Rock Exotica had put into. Did you guys ever see the Rock Exotica prototypes? They made like 7 or 8 of them.
No, I never saw it.
no, I didn't.
Oh yeah, they were pretty cool. They were interesting. It's very similar to what the Rope Runner Pro. A few different things. I think Notch took it in a little slightly different direction, especially on the bottom part, but pretty similar all around idea. I mean, not too much changed from the original. I guess the main thing was trying to get it down into one piece. And it's got stainless steel as opposed to aluminum. And yeah, I think one of the big differences is that little teardrop at the bottom.
Yeah.
So it's got another slick pin, but you also don't have to take it off your harness. So yeah, and I guess that's been now out for about almost a year and a half since the first one came out. I think it was last March or February.
So were you in the development process, or it was like they bought it, they put their engineers on it? Were they like, hey, Kevin, check this out. What do you think? Like along the way?
Yeah, no, I definitely was involved. I think I was not the lead on it by any means, but they kept me abreast of everything that was going on. They sent me runners that I took apart and changed around, and you know, some of them, they sent me one that was like absolutely enormous, this huge one. I was like, no, that's not going to work. It's just too big. But yeah, I think, you know, it was definitely a collaboration. Uh, you know, I've been pretty happy with it. You know, the last couple weeks have been a little bit concerning regarding the spring. There's been some reported failures. So that's been really like, you know, keeping me awake at night a little bit, thinking about what's going to happen with that. So far, we've gotten 6, or Notch has received 6 faulty springs, and yeah, haven't quite identified. There's possibly a correlation between the size of the spring, like you know, there's different tolerances when the springs come off the line. So but there's been it's hard to say too, because there's been only 6 that they've actually have in hand. And that's out of 6,000. So getting, you know, and also 4 of those were one customer. So 4 of the 6 were from one customer.
Oh wow.
And two have come in from, you know, one just came in a couple days ago, so there was 5, and then those 3 from that one customer went in June, and then he had another one. I mean, he works at a company, and so they've got like, you know, 12. They bought 12 of them, but 4 of them out of the 12 went bad on him. And then they've received a couple more. Then they put out a safety notice on Thursday, and they said they've gotten some phone calls, so maybe we'll see some more come in. Yeah, it's a matter of, you know, not. It's a tricky thing. I mean, the original rope runner had at the beginning had a bunch of spring issues too. I don't know if you guys were aware. There was like a whole batch of them that were made where the spring was put on backwards.
Oh man.
Oh.
Yeah, and then actually the spring worked fine in that configuration, like it did its job. But it also, there's that little screw that was holding the spring in.
Yeah.
And because it was put on backwards, it actually unscrewed the screw.
Oh, interesting.
And so the screw would pop out, and then this whole spring would fail. So that was like a huge nightmare at the beginning of the rope runner project. And you know, the CMI kind of redid things and Loctited things, and that seemed to be resolved for the most part. But yeah, I mean, the rope runner is definitely like, it's got so many moving parts, and sometimes I just think, you know, maybe it's just better off sticking with a hitch. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love climbing with my rope runner, I really do. But
yeah, I had that.
I never imagined, like, the original rope runner, I think we sold around, over the whole life, that's since 2014, I think we've sold about 6,000 original rope runners.
Okay.
But the Rope Runner Pro sold 6,000 in a year and a half, you know. Sure. And it's like, oh my gosh, how are there that many people out there? That many climbers? Yeah, I remember I did on the Rope Runner, the original Rope Runner had like a, you know, I had thought about doing it myself. This is even before tree stuff kind of took over. And I was making them in Detroit. I was assembling them in Detroit, and I had a party, sort of like a coming out party for the rope runner. And actually, probably about 20 different people came. Lawrence Schultz came, and Casey Sellner came. A bunch of people came from around, and Johnny Pro came, and I had not met Johnny Pro. You know Johnny Provenzali?
I don't.
You can look up his videos. He's done some really crazy rope runner videos.
Okay.
He's kind of got a name for being pretty crazy. Anyway, he came out, and young guy, early 20s, and he jumped up on a rope runner and like just went flying up the tree, like jumping, like totally wild, crazy guy. I'm like, oh shit, what have I done? What have I done? And yeah, it's been, I worry about it all the time. Ever since then, I've been like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? Putting this rope runner out here. But yeah, I mean, I get a great pleasure climbing on it.
It's great to climb on. I've
love
got
mine.
the Rope Runner Pro, and I'm not a big mechanical hitch person, to be honest with you. But working with Jamie, he was talking about how much he loved his Rope Runner, and then when the Rope Runner Pro came out, I was like, all right, well, you know what? I'll give it a shot. I don't want to be too kind of old guy, refuse to try something new. And so I started climbing with it, and right away started climbing with it quite a bit. Now, I go back and forth between the Rope Runner Pro and
yeah, now.
I was saying I go back and forth when I'm on single rope between the Rope Runner Pro, and I got the Notch Fusion, and I've really enjoyed kind of when I'm climbing with the friction hitch, having that fusion on there and the way it works. I've enjoyed, and that's kind of got me back on working with hitches. But yeah, it's interesting. Listening to that podcast you did, I think our timelines of kind of climbing were pretty close, because if I remember right, you were 97, you started climbing trees.
Yeah, pretty much 96, 97.
Yeah. So I started in 98, and I was real lucky. My family owned the company I was working for, and it was a real progressive company, going to the ISA events. And do you know Scott Altenhoff?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't know him. No.
He's worked with Steve Sillett back, when Steve Sillett was first climbing the redwoods. He was doing single rope with Steve then, and he came and worked for our company probably in like 2002. And so like he showed us all single rope tricks then, but we were, it was kind of like you were saying on that podcast, you go up, you'd ascend up with a couple of ascenders, and then you get onto a gree or something. And I just couldn't get used to working on a gree. I'd just go up and then switch over to double rope and work the tree off a double rope. But then it must have been, I'm thinking 2006 maybe, that I was at a competition. Actually, no, it was later than that. It was 2009, where somebody showed up. I can't even remember who it was, but they showed that if you took a ring and you ran over your friction hitch, you took just an aluminum ring, you pull the rope through it, and then put a carabiner on there to keep the friction. And then on that carabiner, you have a strap that goes back. And so I'd climb around on that, but without this stiff tether there, it just became annoying trying to tend the slack and pull the rope up through that ring carabiner. So I climbed with it for a little while, but it was like, there's something here, but my mind wasn't wrapping around it, and I don't know. I just, as soon as that rope wrench came out, it was such a big, quantum shift of the way I was thinking about climbing with it. That was just great, man. It changed the industry. It really did. Not many people can say they had that effect. That's just awesome. I guess.
hard to wrap my head around too. But you know, when I first thought of the wrench, like I knew it, like I had no doubt that it would. You know, that's the kind of the crazy thing about that episode. It was like such a, you know, it was so clear that, oh my gosh, this is gonna have a big effect.
Yeah.
People are gonna actually climb on this. So, you know, and I'm I'm glad you like that notch tether. I've been really enjoying that stiff tether as well. You know, it's interesting. I played around a bit with the stiff tether at the beginning, but it never really clicked. I think we didn't really have the spring mechanism working right. And, you know, the soft textile tether is really nice and it's comfortable to work with. But if you get that stiff tether right, it's really good. I think the notch tether can be improved still some too. It's a little bit bulky, but
Yeah.
I've been really enjoying climbing with that as well.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Sometimes when you're in tight spots, it can be kind of weird moving around the branches, but you know, it's definitely a step up from it's funny, we had aluminum tethers. I want to say probably 8 years ago or something at the company I was working for.
Oh, you got
Oh, no way.
You got a machine.
Yeah,
out,
we got them machined out. We had somebody that came to our company. I can't remember where Eric came from, somewhere on the East Coast, I think. But
Okay.
and he was talking about them and how he had one, and so we just took it to a machine shop and made a bunch of them. And I don't know why I didn't stick with it. I got to admit, I love double rope as well. So I think I, you know, go back and
Yeah.
forth so much that, you know, if it kind of comes in waves. You know, for whatever reason, I'll go back to like climbing up on like, well, and also it's when, you know, when I was training for a competition, I would start foot locking a lot if I was training for a competition. And so then I would just start working the tree double rope because I'd kind of go old school climbing styles to get ready.
Yeah.
You know, and then I just forgot about it and didn't pick up the stiff tether again for whatever, you know, just because I guess I wasn't thinking about it enough.
Well, I think that's one of the big downsides of that notch tether. When you come to think of it, it needs to be able to switch over to moving rope.
Yeah, that was my
Easier.
biggest issue with it.
Yeah.
I don't use it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it can be done. I feel like it's sort of a they missed the mark on that respect. But yeah, it does work well if you don't switch over.
Yeah. No, I've found I'll carry just a carabiner and a pulley, you know, just a little Petzl pulley on the back of my harness. That way, if I want to switch over, I'll just hang the fusion on the back of the harness and, you know, switch it around.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
it's just another step you got to take. And if there is a way to just detach it, or I don't know.
It should be just one click. Ideally, it should just be a quick click.
Yeah.
And I think that's doable.
It'll get there. You know, like you were saying in that other podcast, it's the necessity is the mother of the invention. You know, it was like you had this need, and so you figured it out, which kind of also makes me think, where do you see in the industry and tree work where we're at right now? What do you think that necessity is that needs to be figured out? Like, is there something out there you think that you know, because at that time, at least for me in my little bubble, that was something that was, you know, we were trying to figure out single rope. And there was this thing, like I said, I had this weird carabiner through a loop and it kind of worked. And you knew there was something there. Is there something like that these days for you that you're trying to figure out, or is you think somebody should be trying to figure out?
He's not gonna tell us that.
Well, I mean, I do think you know, there's definitely a better mechanical out there. I think all of the top action multi-senders, the unisender, the akimbo, the bulldog bone, the rope runner, they're all lacking, I think, in the safety department. Just the inherent nature of them being able to go to full open on a press of the top, you know. The zigzag can kind of fall into that market or fall into that line where it's, you know, it requires a spring. It can be something can disactivate it. There's no, so I think a better mechanical that's easy to use, but maybe more integrated to, well, let's see, you tick all the boxes, you know, it's, I personally would like it midline attachable. I would like it to have maybe a anti-panic feature, where, you know, basically it's also protected from some way of branches falling down on it, or you know, clipping it under your carrot tool. That was a recent accident with a Kimbo that just, you know, earlier this summer, somebody's went behind their back and clipped into the carrot tool.
Oh,
And you know, that can happen on any of those big top devices. Falling on top of it, getting tangled in your clothes. I think, you know, the ID and the Taz Love is, you know, maybe there, but they're a little bit hard to use. So getting, you know, and you have to have two hands on it at all times. They're really jumpy. So I think there's definitely room for a perfected, safer, multi-sender. And you know, that can go back and forth between SRT, moving rope smoothly. You know, it's definitely, when you start thinking about it too hard, it's like, oh, it's just hard to beat a hitch, because a hitch is just, it's so light, it's so versatile. But you know, I think there is potentially a mechanical out there that does it all.
Yeah, I love the feeling of a hitch, and maybe it's just because I've climbed on one so long that I trust that feeling. But you know, they're not jumpy if you get them right. You can kind of adjust it for how the rope is, depending on, you know, how, if you give it a little extra twist before you clip it to your carabiner, or how many wraps you got on. You know, it's a kind of versatile that way. So that's why, I don't know, that I think that's why I like the Fusion, because it, in my mind, it's the best of both worlds. It's got that rope wrench on it. It's got that feel that, you know, but you also got, like I said, the feel of the hitch. I don't know. But again, I also don't want to get too caught in that, you know, oh, this is what I've always used, so I'm just going to use it, because that's a trap that I think is dangerous to get caught in too.
it's the tending that's
Right.
so enticing about mechanical stuff. Like the rope
Yeah.
just falls right through it, you know. And you could find a hitch and rope that matches and it's super dialed in, and I've had it where I'm tied a hitch and I'm in a moving rope system. It's just falling through there, you know, and then activates or whatever. But that can change throughout your climb.
Yeah.
Totally.
So that's what's nice about mechanicals.
Yeah. No, I would fully.
Yeah, and you get that hitch that's working like a mechanical, but then you're like, oh, I've got to like actually manually set this every time I want to sit back in it. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Which is like,
And there's a little bit of a drop where a mechanical device is catching you instantly. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of sit back, I guess,
That's
is
sit
a better
back,
word
yeah.
than drop.
Yeah.
So it's funny. I like those are such minor, like shitty complaints about a hitch, but I love mechanicals because of those little complaints.
Yeah. Well, and they're great,
Yeah.
like, you know, the zigzag, or, you know, the rope runner, or those are really the ones that, no, I've used the unisender quite a bit also. I got the unisender quite a while ago, but I used it very sparingly. It was mainly, you know, if it was like a fur, if I'm just going up and down, and I just, you know, makes it really easy. I never really got into the unicenter if I was in a big broad spreading tree where I was doing these limb walks.
Yeah, I love the
Yeah.
Rope Runner Pro, clicking the chest tender and then just free climbing the tree. The rope just falls through and you're just climbing like a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to go back to something else after doing that. The
Yeah.
Unicenter is amazing, and it's the thing about the Unicenter is like it's been around since 2004, 2005.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned that recently that came out before the rope wrench, and that kind of.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I knew about the Unicenter and wanted one badly, but at that point, you know, they were $500, and like that
Yeah.
was like out of this world. One of the interesting things about the Unicenter is, so Morgan, he's does a lot of crane work, and so he doesn't climb SRT very much at all. Like, and he designed the Unicenter because he was toasting his hitches doing crane work, which is a big problem doing crane work. So he wanted a mechanical, so he wouldn't be burning up his hitches. So he made the Unicenter, but he made it for double rope climbing, and it was sort of accidental. I don't even know if he was the person that discovered that it worked SRT if you could take a wrap around it, but it was discovered after the fact that it works great SRT.
Oh, it
And
was,
actually, in my opinion, works way better SRT than it does in a moving rope.
yeah. No, that's how
But
I always used.
it
I
works-
used it as
it
my
works
top
well.
ascender. I
Yeah.
used it as my top ascender, and then I, advance up the tree, and then just clip it down onto my waist, and then you'd be able to descend. Or if you're doing a removal and tying into something behind you, having that is perfect. But like you say, the first time I saw it was at a tree climbing rendezvous in Grants Pass in, I think it was 2006, and Tom Dunlop was there showing off all the latest and greatest of single rope tricks, and he had the
Oh
Unicenter.
yeah.
And I was sold until he said it was $600, and then I was like, "Well, we'll see till that price comes down."
Yeah.
Yeah, but right on.
Yeah, I've never really climbed on
Yeah, I
one.
think that's interesting as far as the change in the tree climbing world now too. Like, yeah, I mean, maybe me, but I would be much more likely to buy a $600 climbing device now than
Yeah,
in 2005. Now
Yeah.
I feel like I just spent so much. Oh, the latest pulley, the latest block. Hey, what's up?
I don't know. I just wanted to see you.
nice. Got a visitor.
Got a visitor. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's probably pretty late where you're at. I'd be happy to wrap it up if if you got your loved ones coming into the room and whatnot, and I don't know if it's bedtime there or not, what's going on, but
Yeah, it's getting towards bedtime. We gotta get them all teeth brushed and
yeah, I understand how
packed
that
up.
goes. Luckily, my little ones are at grandma's house right now, so that opens up a little room for me to not have to worry about that. But when bedtime comes calling, that's a big deal.
At least it's not a school night anymore.
Yeah.
The weekend is here.
No, thank goodness. Usually we wrap these things up with some kind of final thoughts on the podcast. I don't know if you've got any final thoughts. We usually go around, and then we'll just wrap it up real quick if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, sounds great.
Sweet. Jamie, you got any final thoughts?
Just thanks for tinkering and coming up with the stuff you have. When I first was given a rope wrench and like being taught single rope, I was like, I hate this. This is awful. This thing's stuck on my chest. Like, this is so weird. How can I advance the base tie? I just wasn't about it.
Yeah.
My first tree climbing competition, and I just saw, the best climbers out there were doing this. I was like, okay, there's something to this. So I forced myself to do it. And now I love single rope. I love them both, do them both. But the rope wrench, made all that possible. So like, thanks for tinkering, figuring that out. I'm a huge fan. I have the OG Rope Runner and the Rope Runner Pro. Love them, use them all the time. So thanks, Kevin.
Wow. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll kind of echo what Jamie said. Like, I came up in a time where the rope wrench was already there, and I saw people doing it that were my mentors, and I was like, that they make it look pretty easy, but when I got on it, I was like, well, yeah, I can't move my canopy anchor around. Like, what? This is
Yeah.
I'm having a lot of trouble with this thing. And by the time I got it, we lucky enough that to come up in a time where it's normal now.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks, man. Like I just pruned a crab apple yesterday with my rope wrench.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So I climb a ride or die rope wrench every single day, no matter what. I use it every single day. It's like my favorite thing in the world. So thanks.
You got
Oh,
any?
I appreciate that. It means a lot. It means a lot. And yeah, I think it's what you guys are doing and just talking about the industry. I think that's really, really important. I think we all get kind of stuck in our little worlds.
Mhm.
And so people, opening it up a little bit, being able to hear stories, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's so important. We started doing this because we were missing that during the pandemic. We didn't have the conventions, and we felt disconnected from the arborist community. So we thought we'd try to build it and keep it going in the best way we could. While
Zoom world,
yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, they did have the TCIA this year. I didn't go, so I haven't been in 2 years. I went to those things every year, and yeah, it's been weird the last couple of years not having those normal things.
yeah, no, it's no good. I want to go to. It's been a while since I've been to one, but hopefully I'll be at one soon. Hopefully we see you there soon. Do you have any other final thoughts?
Well, just stay safe out there and keep an eye on your hitches and your rope runners. Make sure they're engaging.
That was super interesting to hear you say you lost a lot of sleep about everybody using your products, because I just gave my apprentice a rope wrench for the first time. He's learned double rope and everything, and I was like, oh my gosh, what was that a good idea? I started thinking so it's interesting. You got a real strong head, and thanks for moving forward with all that the innovation. It just takes a lot of guts, but everyone is over the moon thankful for it. So thanks, man.
I appreciate that. It means a lot to me.
Yeah. And I'd say my final thoughts are just the same thing these guys are said. So I'm just going to say thank you. It's awesome to I don't know, to have such a big impact on the industry, man. That is really cool. So I appreciate you taking the time to think about it, and then not just think about it, but make it happen. That's the other part that a lot of people have a lot of good ideas, and so thank you. And with that, I'll say stay safe and yeah, make it happen.
All right.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks,
Good
Kevin.
talking to you guys.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See ya.
Yep.
Peace.